When the calling of God is scary, we lead by reminding the people of God that Jesus did not come to make us safe. He came to make us brave. Indeed, over the last 10 years, as I have traveled from church to church and as I have engaged this generation of emerging leaders, I have sensed a yearning to be liberated from the mediocrity of safe bets. Indeed, Jesus is offering us an opportunity to lead our faith community out of a prison of triviality and fear through his struggle for justice in the world. And I pray we don't miss it. Because at the end of the day, one of the saddest feelings is a sense of having gone on the trip, but having missed the adventure. I was thinking of this because when I was 10 years old, my dad took me and my brothers to go camping and hiking at Mount Rainier in the Pacific Northwest. Mount Rainier is this massive volcanic dome of rock and ice that goes about 14,000 feet up into the clouds outside Seattle. And about halfway up the mountain, there's these beautiful alpine meadows with these spectacular wildflowers. And perhaps the most spectacular of those meadows is simply called Paradise. And I think one of the ways my father showed his love for us was to take us to such places and to let us just walk mile after mile into these sacred treasures. Now, my brothers, they were older and stronger, and so they would always race ahead up the trail and usually leave little Gary struggling. But my dad, he would always stay behind me. He would stay behind and make me feel like I was setting the pace, close enough to steady me over the streams and the rocks. He'd be there to assure me that I was almost there, and he would sort of hang back and let me know that he was present. But on this particular day, I just didn't want to go on anymore. We had been walking with all the other hordes of tourists in the Paradise Meadow, admiring all the wildflowers, and outside the visitor center, there are these nice paved trails through the flowers. But as you go up those trails, there's a point where the pavement ends, and there's a huge warning sign that indicates all the horrible things that will happen to you if you continue up the trail that goes towards the summit. And I can remember my stomach just tightened into a knot as I looked up at these snowfields and rock formations that just went up and up. And my dad suggested, well, why don't we go up to Camp Muir, which is the base camp used by the climbers who are going to the summit. And of course, my older brothers, they dash off and they're ready to go. And my dad assures me that I can make it. He assures me that he'll help me if I need it, and that the view and the triumph will be more than worth the effort. And besides, it'll just be marvelous to do together. Now, I, on the other hand, am thinking we ought to pay a lot more attention to those nice lawyers who probably made that sign, warning about all those dangers, right? Of course, all kinds of things could go wrong, and I believe they all will probably if we go beyond the sign. And what if I can't make it? And what if my dad doesn't really want to help me, and maybe I'll be humiliated again as the one who couldn't make it up the climb. And so with all these anxieties just beating in my little chest, I responded the only way a 10-year-old boy can when he's really scared. And I insisted that going up to Camp Muir sounded boring. And I insisted it'd be much more interesting to go spend the day at the visitor center at Paradise Meadow. Now, my dad explained, well, if you go do that while we're going up the climb, it'll be a long, long afternoon at the visitor center. But I made my case, and he relented and let me scurry on down to the visitor center. And in I went, and soon I was feeling just really quite pleased with myself. The air was warm and comfortable, and there were all kinds of interesting displays about the animals, and there were these little films about the amazing people who first conquered the mountain. And judging by all the people who were there, this really was the place to be. Now, as you might imagine, as this afternoon wore on, that great big visitor center, it started to get awfully small. All that nice warm air, it just felt stuffy after a while, and those stuffed animals, it just seemed dead. And those inspiring videos that looped on the 8th and 9th time just weren't quite as exciting on the 12th and 13th time. And after a while, I just felt like I wanted to be one of those people actually going up the mountain, not someone just looking at the pictures of it. After a while, I felt bored, sleepy, and small. and I miss my dad. I was totally stuck. I was totally safe, but totally stuck. Now, after the longest afternoon in, of course, my 10-year-old life, my dad and my brothers, they returned flush with their triumph, right? Their cheeks are red from the cold, and their eyes are clear with delight. And sure, they're wet from the snow, and they're hungry, and they're dehydrated, and they've got a few cuts from the rocks. But on the long ride home, they had something else. They had stories. Stories of an unforgettable day with their dad on a great mountain. Now, I, on the other hand, insisted and, revealed nothing, right? I mean, I insisted that this was my favorite day of the whole vacation. But truth be told, I went on the trip, but I missed the adventure. And 35 years later, I can still remember my day stuck at the visitor center. Moreover, likewise, I sense among many of my Christian friends that we are on the journey with Jesus, but we're missing the adventure. In different times and in different ways, our Heavenly Father offers us a simple proposition. Follow me beyond what you can control, beyond where your own strength and competencies will take you, and beyond what is affirmed or risked by the crowd, and you will experience me and my power and my wisdom and my love. Jesus beckons me to follow him to that scary place of service where I risk the vulnerability of a child in order to see how strong my Father is and how much he loves me. Does this mean then that I'm supposed to abandon all the things that I do well? Do I have to let go of my sources of strength, my gifts, my passions, my training, my expertise? No. These are all great things from God, and he wants to use them. But I think he simply wants us to take those strengths on a more demanding climb, in a calling in which we will actually need him, in a calling in which he will be so delighted to grant his help.